You know, whether we're talking about ancient gods or the superheroes in movies today, our stories are just jam-packed with these powerful figures that all feel strangely familiar, right? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden blueprints behind these characters. We're talking about the archetypes of power.
I mean, have you ever really noticed that? You're watching a movie, reading a myth, and it doesn't matter if it's a Greek god or some hero from a comic book, they just seem to echo each other. Well, that is absolutely not a coincidence. It's by design.
And it turns out, for literally thousands of years, across pretty much every culture you can think of, storytellers have been pulling from the exact same set of universal blueprints. It's like these patterns are just baked into our collective imagination.
Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to use a framework, famously developed by the psychologist Carl Jung, to really get a handle on these powerful, universal patterns.
The big idea here is something called an archetype. Now, this isn't about one specific character. It's more like a universal job description. It's a symbolic role that just keeps popping up in stories everywhere, from way back in Mesopotamia all the way to the Philippines.
For our breakdown today, we're going to focus on 4 of the big ones, what are often called the masculine archetypes. And really, these are just patterns of energy that are all about order, action, and intellect. We're talking about the king, the warrior, the magician, and of course, the trickster.
Let's start with the first 2. These guys represent structure, order, and just plain decisive action. You can think of them as the pillars that hold society together, or sometimes the very forces that threaten to tear it all down.
First up, the king. This archetype is the absolute symbol of authority, stability, and the established order. The king is the center of the world, right? He's the one who sets the rules and keeps the entire cosmos in balance.
So, what really makes a king? Well, it's sovereignty, right? The power to make the law. He's this ultimate paternal figure, and his entire purpose is to create a stable, ordered world and protect it from all the forces of chaos.
And what's wild is how this pattern is just global. In Greek mythology, you've got Zeus. He's the quintessential king, the top dog, ruler of all the gods. Then you go halfway across the world to the Philippines, and you find the creator god Bathala, who fills that exact same role, the ultimate source of cosmic order.
Okay, next up, the warrior. Now, if the king's job is to maintain order, the warrior's job is to go out and create it. He's the one who runs straight at chaos and conflict. He's the ultimate agent of action.
The warrior is all about drive and super-focused energy. He's the sword of the kingdom, the one who fights the battles that need fighting. And this constant struggle isn't just external, it often forces a really profound transformation on the inside, too.
And again, you see this exact same archetype showing up in completely different traditions. The Greeks had Ares, the god of war, who's basically the embodiment of that drive for conflict. And in the Philippines, you have the legend of Bernardo Carpio, a hero trapped between 2 mountains, a warrior whose escape is supposed to trigger a world-changing event.
All right, so we've covered the archetypes of structure and raw force. Now let's look at 2 figures who get their power not from a sword, but from hidden knowledge, from intellect, and from pure cunning. So let's talk about the magician. And no, we're not talking about pulling rabbits out of a hat. The magician is the master of secret knowledge, of technology, of understanding the deep systems of the universe. He's the sage, the healer, the prophet.
See, the magician's power isn't brute force, it's understanding. He knows how the world really works, whether that's through prophecy, science, or medicine. He's that wise advisor who gets things done through pure cunning and intellect.
And this is where you start to see some interesting shades of gray. On one hand, you've got someone like Apollo, the Greek god of prophecy. He represents that clean, ordered, enlightened wisdom. But then you get figures like Hermes, or the Norse god Loki, who use their knowledge for deception, and they start to blur the line between being a magician and our next archetype.
And that brings us to our final and maybe the most disruptive archetype of them all, the trickster. This is the guy who exists to bend and break every single rule. The trickster operates completely outside the system that the king and the warrior built. He's an absolute master of deception, using cleverness to outwit anyone in power. And by challenging every single boundary, the trickster often becomes the surprise catalyst for huge, profound change. And this disruptive force is a critical part of stories everywhere. I mean, whether it's the clever mouse-deer Pilandak from Philippine folklore, the shape-shifting Loki in Norse myths, or the pleasure-seeking Greek god Dionysus, every culture has a character whose job is just to shake things up.
But look, these archetypes aren't always heroes, not at all. power has a dark side. So what happens when these powerful patterns show up in their immature or, their negative forms?
Well, each archetype has what the Jungians call a shadow side. When the king's desire for order turns into a lust for total control, he becomes the tyrant. When the warrior's aggression isn't balanced by honor, he becomes the sadist. And when the trickster's cleverness is only used for selfish gain, he becomes the manipulator.
As a couple of experts on the topic put it, these shadow forms are what you get when this kind of power is left unchecked by wisdom or compassion. They just become these purely destructive forces.
Okay, so when you see these exact same patterns, both the good and the bad, popping up in so many different cultures, it leads us to the biggest, and frankly, the most fascinating question of all. So what are these archetypes really? Are they universal truths, these fundamental patterns that are actually hardwired into the human mind like Jung believed? Or are they just cultural ideals, scripts that each society writes to teach its own values about power and order?
And that's really the question I want to leave you with. The next time you watch a movie or read a story and you see the king, the warrior, the magician, or the trickster, ask yourself, are you seeing some timeless truth about what it means to be human? Or are you just seeing the values of a culture perfectly packaged and sold right back to you? The answer might just change how you see every story you've ever been told.